r/AskReddit. What was your worst duck? I'm actually going to die moment? Mountain biking and I just about slipped off a 30-foot ledge. Barely caught myself. That the most panic and complete fear I have ever felt in my life, and I never wanna feel it again. Damn. As a mountain biker, that's one of my biggest fears. Flying off a cliff/gorge. I run clips, so if that did happen to happen, I probably wouldn't be able to unclip very good. What's a clip? Fell 3 stories. Due to freezing rain on the roof that night. And on the way down I was certain I was going to die. I went out there to talk on the phone since my bedroom was above my parents'. I fell at about a 45-degree angle onto my feet. The impact caused my T9 vertebrae to fracture. And once I fell from that angle to flat, my right lung collapsed and I had a brain bleed on the front and back of my brain. Luckily my father had heard me scream and found me within a couple minutes, coughing up blood into the grass. He then drove me to the hospital and nearly passed out a few times on the way there, figuring that it was already too late for me. Spent the whole ride trying to calm him down as I felt the pressure increase in my chest from the amount of blood filling my chest due to the collapsed lung. When I arrived at the hospital I blacked out as nurses and my parents and family doctor were around me looking worried sick. TL. Doctor, fell 3 stories. Fractured spine. Collapsed lung. And 2 brain contusions on the front and back of my brain because of freezing rain that night. Did it leave any permanent damage? After about 5 months in a back brace I was fine. Got around in the back brace the whole time with no pain. Don't like being touched in the place the chest tube was inserted through my rib cage, that's about it lol. I was a passenger in a car when the driver started having a seizure. His foot was on the gas pedal and the car was going faster and faster. And we were flying through a downtown area. It's a miracle we didn't hit any people or buildings. Somehow I realized, after about 5 blocks, to push the gear shift into neutral, auto transmission. Shifter in the middle, and was then able to steer the car into a pile of snow. Driver was still seizing when the car stopped. Our daughter was in the back seat. I called 911, but gave the dispatcher the wrong cross streets in my panic. The ambulance came to 2 blocks away, but I could hear it. Fortunately the dispatcher had kept me on the phone. And that's the day we found out my husband had the brain tumor that was eventually, 28 days later, fatal. Edit. Thank you all so much for your kind thoughts. I was trying to answer you all one by one, but thought this would be better. It's been almost 5 years. Some days are good, some are not. And it still has an almost daily impact, as you can imagine, because I'm the parent of a child who lost her father. We have gone to grief counseling, and we will again as needed. My husband had never had a seizure prior to this, that we know of. The shifter was in the middle as opposed to on the column. I called him the driver, because that was the context of why I thought I was going to die. I think that's all of the questions I was asked. Thank you again for your kind thoughts. Oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. How traumatic. I was struck by lightning. It blew me off my feet, paralyzed me and knocked me unconscious. While I was unconscious I was semi-aware, not in an awake and talking way, more of a lucid dreaming type of way. Peaceful and calm. All I could see was blackness and falling stars. Kinda like the green scrolling numbers on the Matrix. Before I came to, I honestly thought that was what death was. Edit. Wow, this story blew up. Thanks for all the questions and concern, guys. Very kind of you. Edit 2. If you have questions, keep them coming. I'll do my best to answer them all. You probably can win the lottery now. Heh. I grew up in a tiny shithole of a town. Neighbor worked the convenience store nearby. When I got home I got her to sell me a scratch ticket. I won $5. Got a piece of steak stuck down my throat. Needed the hemorrhage, which my dad performed. Scary stuff. I finished the steak. Ducking never let a good steak go to waste. Good job, soldier. Found Ron Swanson's account. I woke up and saw a huge protrusion in my ribs. I thought for sure it was a malignant tumor. Broke down then and there, only to find out later from the doctor that I had fractured my ribs and somehow not realized it. I can imagine you being reduced to a whimpering pile in front of the doctor and he was just like, nah bro, that's just your bones. But doctor, what about all these tumors on each hand? Fingers. Mate. That time when we slid down that glacier face and went down and down. Faster and faster until my ex's ice pick and a tree stopped us. Duck that. My ice climbing days are done. Duck ice climbing. Once. Never again. Ice is so unstable. What is anyone thinking ever? Let's go climb this sheet of craggy, brittle glass, it'll be great. I was roofied at a party. Besides not being able to ducking, move and vomiting uncontrollably, my blood pressure and body temp tanked. It took an hour for me to get to a hospital. And God, was that bad. I genuinely thought I was going to die and came to peace with it. This was a week ago. Duck me dead. I hope there's a police investigation going. Unfortunately no. I was taken to a HIT hospital and they didn't test for a hypnol. They didn't even take my bag. It wasn't until after that I connected the dots and realized I only had 2 drinks. B. I had all the symptoms of being roofied. C. A few different guys were illegally chatting me up at one point. The whole thing is a blur. Honestly. My uncle and I were swimming around a bunch of rocks at the edge of the beach one time and it was super choppy. Big mistake because it got to the point where we wanted out and we couldn't swim the way we came because the tide was ripping way too much our way. So we tried to get up on the rocks. My uncle got stuck in some fishing line that was left there and I was a bit further down. Got dumped right into a deep rock pool. High sides and I couldn't get out of it. After spending what felt like 5 minutes, but it probably wasn't, getting pushed underwater when trying to scramble onto the rocks, not reaching anything worth grabbing onto, and getting cut from them because of the heavy waves, I just resorted to screaming and thinking I was probably genuinely going to drown. I didn't know what to do. Then some random guy who happened to be in the area spearfishing came up and dragged me out. Screaming was the right thing to do. It's alarming how many people drown silently when there was someone within hearing distance who might have been able to help. Note: I'm not encouraging untrained people to put themselves in dangerous situations to save others. I'm just saying, if you think you might be drowning, yell for help. That's because most people who are actually drowning don't have an opportunity to yell. They are trying to breathe air in. Iraq USMC. Got knocked down by an RPG blast ridiculously close to me after an IED. Disabled our vehicle. Lost my rifle. Was being sprayed by AK fire. Ears ringing. Barely conscious. Army Black Hawk shows up and quells enemy fire. Buddy pulls me to safety. I thought I would for sure be killed. Good times. I'm surprised to not see more stories like this here. I hope you don't mind, for neatness sake, that I file mine under yours. I was a medic with the Royal Marines, who were working closely with the Afghan National Army. Our role on this particular day was to advance further north from our fob than any previous unit to an abandoned village south of a suspected insurgent stronghold. We would be supported by 50 calories on peaks southwest and southeast of us. It was quite a trek through a network of deep waters which eventually led us shy of our destination. In order to get to the village, we had to climb out and traverse over open ground. About 300 meters. The village could only be described as archaeological. Pretty derelict. The surrounding ground we had gone across was old agricultural land and the sun had baked the furrows and ridges of previous farming into fossils. It was pretty hard going. We were there for 5-10 minutes. Exploring. All was quite quiet, and I found myself dreaming a bit of what life was like here previously. It was then we were hit from the north. It seems that we had confirmation that the village to the north was very hostile. We were fighting for an hour or so. Our ammunition was running low and the day was progressing rapidly. We tried to call in some fast air, but the brief window we were allocated couldn't locate accurate firing positions. Eventually we got comms through telling us to draw back to the fob. We got to the place where we had initially accessed the old village. Enemy fire had ceased and all was quiet. We sat with our backs against a wall. The wall dividing us from the 300-meter run across open ground back to the shelter of the Wadi network and our way back home. The enemy knew we were there. They knew the route we had to take, and it was quite clear as we sat there that we were going to be very easy target practice for them. We had lost our 50 calorie support. no fast air, and completely out of range of our mortar fire support team. At that moment I knew I was going to die. We all were. There was no way that we would be able to survive that run over open ground. Looking around, this fact hadn't escaped anyone. I lit a cigarette and said my goodbyes. My wife back home, my family, and then a shift happened. There was no regret, no fear. I experienced this sense of peace that it will be okay. I'm going to die, but it's okay. Everything will be okay. I couldn't stay there. There was no other way out. There was no choice. I couldn't be angry at anyone. This was nobody's doing. No one had designed this. There was inevitability and acceptance. We finished our cigarettes and we ran. The amount of firepower that was aimed at us was immense, and during all my experiences in Afghanistan I hadn't or never would after encounter that much fire at us. Rounds fell at my feet. I felt the sting of air across my face as what I think was a 50-calorie round passed me. Dust was kicked up all around us. All this time there was peace. Not the kind of airy fluffy peace, but sharp. All I had to do was run and wait for the bullet to take me. Now what I'm about to say may sound dark, and I don't want this to sound like I'm betraying feelings of suicidal ideation, rather that I'm illustrating how powerful that sense of peace and acceptance was. But when I got into the wadi and checked that we were all in the wadi, no injuries and all alive, I was overcome with a wave of anger. This was where I should have died. There was no way I or any of us, let alone all of us, could have lived. I was angry because I had been given peace. I had entirely accepted my death, and it had been taken away from me because they missed all that firepower over open ground, and they missed. Sorry if there are many typos. Wrote this on my mobile. Edit. Paragraph breaks. Okay. I've read the AskReddit threads about annoying Reddit sayings, but they can all shush. Thank you, kind stranger. D. That was beautiful. Write a book, man. I was 15 and walking across a railroad bridge over a creek when I heard the train coming from around the curve. The bridge was not wide enough to stand to the side. I ran back the way I came, as fast as I could, with the train coming from behind. The railroad ties were the perfect length for my stride. As I got near the embankment, the ties suddenly became further apart and I tripped, banging my shin, and I couldn't get back up. I crawled the last 30 feet on my hands and knees, rolling off the track at the earliest point possible. A solid 90 seconds later the train came by. I had lots more time than I feared, but I was terrified during the run. My uncle drives train, and you're lucky that they have experience with people playing on bridges and in tunnels. They generally go pretty slow through those areas for exactly that reason. At least those areas that are near town/cities. If you're outside of a populated area for whatever reason, stay off the goddamn tracks. Wearing bright colors is a good idea if your friends or kids or whatever want to go near them. But outside of zones where they slow down, you'd probably be surprised how fast they actually go. Assume a bullet train will come through at any second, and you might not have to have that surprise be deadly. My uncle almost quit, and his job is his favorite thing. It's his passion and his income for his family, because a guy went into the middle of nowhere, shot up on the tracks and sat there. He wasn't able to stop the train in time, and it was ruled a suicide because the man reacted to the yelling and noises but made no effort to move. On that note, don't kill yourself by anything that would require another human. It messed him up bad enough that I'm 100% sure it still bothers him today and will bother him forever. I've never seen that man cry before that. Just a sap. Edit. Aroga. Plus trains can't just stop. They take miles to slow down. They have to decelerate very slowly, not only because of the massive weight, but also the massive length of the linked vehicles. As I was upside down and everything was going in slow motion when I rolled my car. I'm still here though, and had no injuries whatsoever. Wear your seatbelts, kids. It boggles my mind that people don't wear seatbelts. A little discomfort for a lot of safety. I first read that as when I was in the upside down too much Stranger Things, I think. It is added comfort for me. Just seems like I'm driving naked without a seatbelt on. Ducking like and subscribe.